This is CHSR 97.9 FM here in Fredericton, New Brunswick, Canada, and you're listening to Python's Paradise, your film and music show. And this is your host, Greg Gilbert, a.k.a. the Python Hyena. And folks, I have a wonderful, talented woman on the phone with me today. She does music, she does movies, and, she's got talent right across the globe, I think, in every area. I'm talking about the lovely, the talented, the beautiful Gloria Loring. How do you do, Gloria?
Well, I do just very well. Thank you so much. I love being called the lovely, the talented, the beautiful. We're off to a rousing start.
There you go. Well, you know, you're sitting there in Southern California. You're probably warm, and we're just hoping not to get hit with any more snowstorms here.
I know. Well, I actually live up in the mountains. People don't realize it, but where I live, which is about 2 hours from downtown Los Angeles, I'm 5,000 feet up in the mountains, so we get some snow. We still have last little bits of snow, but we're a fairly mild climate, so it's about 65 degrees outside right now, and I'm very grateful. I was sitting outside working on a script I've got to learn, so I'm very happy for the pretty days now.
Yeah, you got an upcoming project? You want to plug it?
Well, sure. I mean, those of you in New Brunswick probably won't be here for it, but I'm appearing again at the Annenberg Theater in Palm Springs, a beautiful theater associated with the Palm Springs Museum. And I was there 3 years ago in a play by Nora and Delia Ephron called Love, Loss, and What I Wore, and won an award for that, and that was great. And they're having me back to do a one-woman show called The Lady with All the Answers, and it's about Ann Landers. And dear Ann Landers, I get to play Ann Landers, and it's a one-woman show, as I think I just mentioned. And so I've got about 30 pages of dialogue I've got to know starting in another week for rehearsals. So I'm fast at work on it. I'm making progress. I'm feeling a little less frightened by the prospect. So
you'll pull it off.
Well, you know what? When you're on a theater stage, you have to pull it off. So it's a great motivator. You know, dread and fear are great motivators.
You know what? It's interesting because I'm currently reading Anna Kendrick's book called Scrappy Little Nobody. And she of course, star of Pitch Perfect. She is talking about being like 6 years old, being on the stage, and maybe not 6 years old, maybe a little older than that. I could have my references crossed there. But being very, very young child actor, being on the stage and having to learn all that, and how exhausted it was for her at that age to learn all that.
Yeah, well, it demands a lot of concentration, and I think sometimes for young kids, that kind of concentration is difficult. But the ones who really want it do it, and they learn how to do it, and that's a great facility to have at your beck and call, to be able to remember what you need to know and gain a perspective from a large amount of material. Yeah. No, I didn't realize she'd been a child actor, so I didn't start really. I sang the whole time I was a kid. I was always first and foremost a singer. My son, Alan Thicke, is the fifth generation of musicians on my dad's side of the family. There's him, then there's me, then my dad, then his dad, and then there were some other musicians sprinkled along the way, some child prodigy violinists and all of that. So music was in our blood, and so I started singing very early on in school productions, in church choir, and started singing little jobs here and there when I was about 14. And then by the time I was 18, I was out on the road by myself with my music in hand, going from town to town, singing at small clubs, and it was quite an education, I'll tell you.
It's funny, you mentioned Alan Thicke, and he had, of course, had that big song. Why am I forgetting the name of it?
Blurred Lines.
Blurred Lines, yeah. I gotta ask, did you hear the Weird Al Yankovic parody of that?
You know what? I think I did at some point, but I don't remember it. But I love Al. He's just the funniest, and he's so clever. Yeah, I don't remember what it was, but I remember thinking it was very clever.
It was called Word Crimes, making fun of everybody's really bad communication and grammar online.
Oh, that's funny. That's funny. Yeah, no, he had that huge international hit, and of course there was a lot of fuss around it that was just really silly about whether it was plagiarized in some way, and it wasn't, because just for any of you who are listening and heard about all of that, the Marvin Gaye family people said that he had stolen Marvin's song. But when, to the ear, it might sound similar, but what defines a song are the exact notes of the melody, the words, and the chord structure. And the words of Robin's song were different than Marvin Gaye's, the notes of the melody were different, and the chord structure was different. But unfortunately, you didn't have experts in what makes a song at that trial. So at that point, they ruled against him and Pharrell, but I think it's still being talked about or discussed or something. So, but that was quite an upheaval, I'll tell you, for our family, and we were very concerned about it.
Yeah, and of course, the video, Emily, I cannot pronounce her last name, but the brunette model in it came off that with, I guess, a film career going now.
Oh, my gosh. Well, good for her. She's a beautiful girl.
Yeah, very beautiful. She was in the Entourage movie, which I liked more than a lot of people did. But
oh, I like that movie. Yeah, I'm a big movie fan. I loved all I saw almost all of the nominated movies and for this year's Oscars, and I really did think it was either going to be La La Land or Moonlight. I thought either one of them would have been a fitting Best Picture winner, so I was pleased with either choice.
You know what? I just wanted to see one thing happen at the Oscars, and that was to see Emma Stone win it, and I got that.
Oh, she's lovely. She's lovely. Yeah, so
I've had a big crush on her since Superbad, her first film 10 years ago. Yeah. So I was happy to see her win. It's interesting because my favorite film of last year was Richard Linklater's Everybody Wants Some, which was
I didn't see that.
Yeah, it was poorly marketed, and it's almost like Linklater's one of these artists that tries to do something different, and because it's not commercial, it doesn't get the big push. But I went and saw Everybody Wants Some, which played here for 2 weeks only. I went to it 9 times, and I bought the soundtrack.
Oh my gosh!
Yeah, first time I ever saw a movie 9 times in the theater. And
well, he's a very esoteric or iconoclastic movie maker, and so when people go into movies with expectations, some of my favorites this year were Hidden Figures,
okay,
Lion, Arrival, La La Land just knocked me out.
Yeah.
My record producer Ted Perlman went to see it in Pasadena at a regular theater. And after the opening number with all the dancing and music and everything, the people in the theater stood up and gave it a standing ovation. So that was pretty wild. So anyway, yeah, you and I sound like we're big movie buffs.
I am. I'm actually a movie critic. I've been one since 1996. So.
Okay. Well, then you've got probably more fine points to express than I do.
Yeah, but I have a thing, though. I don't go to the big films on their first week. Like, I just saw the Lego Batman movie just this past week, and it's been here since the beginning of February. And that's kind of how I operate. When something's hype, I wait until it dies down. And it's how I've always been. I usually am more interested in the smaller films. I'll give you an example. We just had a film released here, an animation called Ballerina, which will be released in the States as Leap. But it's an animated film. And people, I tell you, I went into the theater, and there was mothers and children giving me the stare down. Like, I felt like a sore thumb.
What are you doing at a ballet movie?
You know what? Here's the thing. I knew something that they didn't. You see, number one, I hadn't seen any of the trailers for it, so I know advertising, and that's usually a hint that I'm going to be more interested in it than something that's all over the drink cups at McDonald's. And
Yeah.
number two, I come to discover that it's an English language French-Canadian film.
Oh. Okay.
I'm like, it's a Canadian film. I'm like, wow. I said, I want to go support something that was made in Canada.
Well, sure, sure.
I guarantee you nobody in that theater knew that. And I was just blown away at how beautifully animated this film was. And I guess it premiered in, I think it was France in December last year.
Oh,
So
great.
yeah, so that's kind of where my mindset is when it comes to going to the movies. And
Okay.
yeah. Anyway, I was looking at your stats and stuff, and I guess you started singing at age 14 in a little group called Those Four.
Yes, there were four of us. Gee, what a surprise. Yeah, we sort of did the folk music and two guitars and a stand-up bass. It was sort of Peter, Paul, and Mary plus one. And I had long blonde hair, and we sang at the coffee houses. And in Miami, I was living there then, going to high school there. My family had moved there from Minnesota. And but as I mentioned, by the time I was 18, I was off on my own with my music in hand, singing, and I worked clubs, and then by the time I was 21, I started doing television. I did the Tonight Show with Johnny Carson and the Merv Griffin Show and all kinds of shows, and did hundreds of television shows. And then when I was 23, I met Alan Thicke, that good dyed-in-the-wool Canadian, and I was actually in Toronto at the Royal York Hotel, starring there. And Alex Trebek, this story I didn't know until just recently at the memorial service for Alan. Alex Trebek saw my picture in the elevator at the Royal York and called up Alan and said, there's this beautiful girl performing at the Royal York, and I'm going to go down and see her show, and I think I'm going to ask her out if she's not, engaged. And Alan called me before Alex did and invited me out to have dinner with his parents out in Brampton, outside of Toronto. And, the rest is history. We were, I think really from that first week or so, there was just this enormous attraction, and we met in January, and we were married in August of that same year. And, we were married for 16 years, and as I'm sure most people know, he passed very suddenly from a heart condition, an unknown heart condition, this past December. And it was a huge shock, of course, to all of us. We had just all been together for Thanksgiving at Robin's house. We always have big family gatherings and lots of children running around, and that's sort of what we do. And very, very Canadian, So, wait a minute, my other phone is ringing. I'm going to turn that off. So, so anyway, he passed, and that was a huge loss. And I know it reverberated up in Canada, and he was much loved as Dr. Seaver, was it? Yeah. He was America's father back in the 80s, and there's a huge hole in the family. I mean, it's not the same without him. He was a centerpiece, certainly.
Did he ever sing Blurred Lines?
I don't think so. I don't know. Maybe you never know. You never know in his private moments.
I could see that.
Yeah. Even kidding around. Yeah. So that's been a big loss for the family, and it was shocking to me too, because he seemed healthy, but there were things going on inside of him, and just a word to the wise, he was a smoker. And, when you're doing certain things to your body over a long period of time, sometimes it catches up with you all of a sudden. So there's no way to say that's absolutely what caused his aortic aneurysm, but one of the doctors said it definitely contributes to the danger. So, we just have to make a choice in those things. And but he had a great life. And he went out the way any good Canadian male would want to, playing hockey with his son.
You know what? What a great bonding experience. And it's sad that he's gone, but you know what? His son has got to be at least happy of spending those last moments with him.
Yeah, I think Carter is, and if anything, it's helped him be closer to my sons, who are his half brothers, and they always kind of were together at family events. But I think because he's only 19 or 20, he's leaning on them a little more as adult male figures in his life, and he's a good kid, Carter. He's a real good kid. It's been a joy to watch him grow up over the years.
What was it like? Those 16 years being married to Alan Thicke. Tell us a little bit about what made him tick and what he was all about.
Oh, my goodness. Enormous amount of ambition, very, very hard worker. I think especially when he was in the early stages of his career. Career came before everything, which was hard on the marriage and hard on me. But he built up a lot of good stuff for himself and for his family, and gradually he made more time for family as the boys got into their early years, their 8, 9, 10. He would take them on trips with him, and so they had a lot of really good memories. And he was a taskmaster. He believed that everything must be done to the nth degree and be very excellent. So I learned a lot from him. I was a little more casual in my approach to things, especially when it came to business and career, and he wasn't. And that was a really good example for me to live around and to really step up my own game in the way I did everything. So it was a very instructive marriage.
Yes, I remember him, of course, playing the dad in Growing Pains, and I guess I was wondering if how he dealt with the. Well, I'll approach this way. I come from a Christian household. I was baptized, and I read from my Bible, but I'm not all that. I don't agree with how Kirk Cameron has gone about this little crusade. Yeah, I hated that movie Fireproof. It was awful.
Oh.
But I do know that there was a lot of tension. I don't know if from Alan Thicke's side. I do believe on Tracy Gould's end of it, there was a little bit of tension when there was this revival and Kirk Cameron showed up. And I was wondering how Alan Thicke had dealt with that.
I have no idea. By that time, we were separated and moving toward divorce. Actually, he started Growing Pains after we were divorced, I believe, 87 or so. So I was not talking to him or had his ear or, was not a confidant on what things were going on. And I really know nothing about that whole scenario of tensions or someone being to this or to that. I can't speak to that at all.
Well, he definitely provided a nice, lighthearted, comedic presence on the show. I remember Alan Thicke very well and very positively from that show. And the fact
he had a wonderful sense of humor about things. He could take. I remember once he was lying in bed and there was a pillow that had been brought in from one of the boys' rooms from the other room, and put under. He had a couple of pillows stacked up, and I said, "Oh." And I was so I was brought up in an alcoholic home, so I was always trying to make everything just right, trying to correct things and make life just perfect. And so I was, I was running around putting things away, and I saw that pillow with the wrong pillowcase on the bed, and I snatched it out from under his head. His head went back and hit the wall. And he looked at me and said, "Why did you do that? Are the pillow police showing up any minute?" I mean, he always had a funny way, a funny comeback, a funny idea when we got separated. And, he was going through a lot. And he had said to someone, they did some interviews, "We understand you and Gloria are separated and your show was canceled." And he said, yes. He said, "Well, it was a bit of a surprise to me because I was happily married for 14 years. Unfortunately, Gloria was only happily married for 11. He would have a way of taking anything that came along. And I think that came from, well, his mother had a very funny sense of humor. And Alan's early training was at the CBC, and he did everything at the CBC. He wrote special material songs. He wrote sketches. He created characters. He had a character called Pierre Lepac, and who was a French Canadian. I don't speak so good English, but I do the best I are. He would come in with Band-Aids. He'd come in with all the pads on and the cocky stick and Band-Aids all over his face, and he'd black out a couple of his teeth. And, he did this on Tommy Hunter's show a couple of times. So he just had this enormous capacity for finding a comedic reaction to whatever was going on.
Yeah, and the fact that he was playing hockey, he obviously was in good enough shape to do stuff like that, because that could be a pretty rough sport.
Yeah, it was pickup hockey, and someone had told me he was finding himself out of breath more frequently, but refused to go in and get it checked. So, he said, no, I'm fine, so whatever. And, well, what are you going to do? Everybody has their own way.
Well, we miss him, and it's sad that he's gone.
Yes, the family misses him too. He was quite a centerpiece to the family.
Well, I move it on to after your those 4 days. I noticed you had one film credit back there from 1965, a film I'd not heard of until I looked you up, called Once Upon a Coffee House.
Oh. I was basically sitting in the background, and I was so self-conscious, I didn't know where to look. I didn't know what to do. Let's just not even discuss that. It took me, I didn't start studying acting till after I started doing my first television shows in my early 20s. And I studied acting for over 10 years. I had a couple of teachers who were not really helping me move in the direction I needed. And then I finally got with someone who really helped me, and it was at that point I'd been singing for 15 years, where I got an agent who sent me out 3 times in 1 week. Finally, I was usually sent out about twice in a year, and it's hard to have your chops up ready to perform if you only do something twice a year. Be like if you play hockey twice a year, your legs aren't going to be under you the way they would be if you play every week. So anyway, I went out, and 3 times in 1 week I auditioned, and that third audition I was really up to speed, and that's how I got the Days of Our Lives. It was that third audition. They had me come back again, and then I screen tested, and I won the role, and I was there on Days of Our Lives for almost, 6.5 years, as Liz Chandler, one of the most popular characters in all of daytime during those years. And it was just such a great experience, because when I went to Days of Our Lives, it was my very first acting job. I'd studied in classes, but it was the first time I actually did it on screen. And I for the first year, I swear, every time they said, Gloria, can we speak to you? I thought, okay, they're firing me. That's it. They figured out I don't know what I'm doing, and they're going to fire me. But I lasted. I lasted for 6.5 years, so that was great fun.
It's interesting because I had somebody, I'm not going to name who it is, it's not from Days of Our Lives, but from another soap opera. I was following this person on Twitter, and I got this notification from her about an Indiegogo project that she was doing. And I checked into the project, and I was like, this sounds kind of interesting. And I made a donation to it, and I was hoping to do that in exchange to have her come on my show and do an interview. And I have not heard back. And I'm going to tell you, I was not happy about that, but...
Well, sometimes people don't get the message. Literally don't, it gets lost in an office or something. So you'll try again. Yeah.
Yeah, well, I'm not going to hold it against her,
I can comment on that. That's not my arena.
Yeah.
Someone else's response to your request is not in my wheelhouse.
Well, I found it kind of weird that I got this private message asking to help support this thing.
I know nothing about this.
Yeah. Well, so anyway, I don't know. Maybe it went to all of her Twitter followers, but I was kind of like, gee, why am I getting this? But hey, I supported. But Anyway,
I get a lot of stuff that I don't know where it quite comes from, so that can be the case. Anyway.
Well, while you were doing Days of Our Lives, you did, of course, you had a son that was suffering from diabetes, and you made your own, based on with the cast of Days of Our Lives, you did a celebrity cookbook, which that sounds very, very interesting to do something like that for a cause like that.
Well, it came out of what was going on in my home. I mean, my son Brennan, who is Robin's older brother by 2 years, was diagnosed with diabetes in 1979, and I joined the cast of Days of Our Lives in 1980. And Brennan, at that point, had diabetes for a little over a year, and said to me, "Mama, when are my shots going to be over?" And I couldn't answer him because, of course, we know that diabetes, until there's a cure, is forever, for a lifetime. So I said to him, "Well, I don't know, but I'm working on it." And I had learned about the Juvenile Diabetes Research Foundation, and I had joined, and they were raising money for research. And I noticed that a lot of the actors in the dressing room would trade recipes sometimes. And I thought, I bet the fans, the 10 million fans we have, would love a cookbook with these recipes. So I got help from a lot of people, and I put together a Days of Our Lives celebrity cookbook, and I had everything ready to go, the pictures, the autographs, the recipes, the printer lined up, that I needed $40,000 to print 50,000 books. And the way we were going to work it was that we would give, if you sent a $10 donation, we would send you a book as a thank you. And with 10 million viewers, there was a chance we would sell quite a lot of books. But I needed that $40,000. And this is actually the first chapter of my book about coincidence. And I went into Days of Our Lives one Friday morning, and I put my bag down on the chair, and I did my day's work, and then I had to catch a plane to Houston. And when I picked up my bag at the end of the day, there was a little card underneath it that said, "Expect a miracle." And I looked at the card, and I thought, well, this isn't mine. Where did it come from? Oh, what the heck. I put it in my bag, and I went to the airport. The next day, long story short, I met a man who helped me underwrite the Days of Our Lives celebrity cookbook. 24 hours after I found the card that said "Expect a Miracle," the person who would help us raise $1 million for diabetes research stepped into my life and said he would help. So, that was an extraordinary coincidence, and it was when I was talking to someone like yourself, several years later, actually, after we'd raised the $1 million for research, and I said, "Isn't that an amazing coincidence?" And he said, "Yes, but coincidence is God's way of remaining anonymous."
The name of your book.
The name of my book. And I said, whoa, wait a minute. That's very cool. Let me write that down. Coincidence is, what now? God's way of, what? Remaining anonymous. And I thought, well, what exactly does that mean? But I thought it sounded so smart. Well, of course it is. It was said by Albert Einstein. So if you're going to have something said by Albert Einstein, it might have some kind of really big perspective. And so I lived with that saying for a lot of years, and I started to use it when I talked about how we raised the $1 million. And having that perspective in my consciousness started me on a path toward watching the way life can unfold, how just what we need may step into our lives when we most need it. And they're not always positive things. Sometimes something negative comes in that helps us make a course correction and live our lives in a new way, or see things in a new way, or appreciate something in a new way. So I set out, and it took me quite a long time to write a book that was based on Albert Einstein's saying that combined both spiritual understanding from the great minds and hearts from the spiritual traditions across the board and around the world, and also quantum physics, which, of course, was Albert Einstein's area of expertise. And it was quite a wonderful undertaking, and I collected my own stories and other people's. And I think the great happiness for me has been that I've heard from people that this book has become sort of one of those books they keep on their nightstand and they refer to every now and then. They'll open it and gather a little bit of somebody's wisdom that I included in the book again, and have it re-enthuse them for their life and how things are unfolding, and to keep looking for the good. I think that's a great way to say it, to keep looking for what's good in our life, for what's leading us on a path of growth and improvement.
Wow. Yeah, because diabetes, so many people suffer with it. How has that worked now with the cookbook and stuff? How is your son doing now?
Well, the cookbook raised money for research, and that was very important. The Juvenile Diabetes Research Foundation is presently the largest organization, nonprofit in the world, non-governmental, that is raising money for type 1 diabetes research. Brennan is doing well. He's still going. He's had it, 38 years. This summer will be 38 years. He doesn't have any outstanding complications. He's had to have a few laser surgeries on his eyes, but that's all doing well, and he's functioning, and he's taken pretty darn good care of himself for all these years. I have another friend who's had diabetes for 52 years, and she's taken meticulous care of herself, and she has no complications. So it can be done, but it takes an enormous commitment. I think for my girlfriend, Deborah, that commitment started with the idea that she hated it if anybody said, no, you can't do something. So when she was diagnosed at age 9, she made up her mind that she would take such good care of her diabetes that no one would ever be able to say, you can't do that because of diabetes. And that's more or less what has happened for her. She's still got her legs and heart and eyes, and everything is working beautifully. So it just to inspire people, it can be done. And even if you're having difficulty, if you improve your control, improve what you eat and when, and in portions and all of that, you can have a better life. So you don't need to suffer from diabetes. There's this thing, everybody's suffering from diabetes. Diabetes is a burden. It's a challenge, but it depends on how you look at it. Everybody's got something they're burdening themselves with, and it depends on how you handle it and how you step up to that challenge, and the support you gather around you. Those things are very, very important.
Yes, I agree. Well, I'm glad to hear that your son is still with us and still succeeding. That's great news. Congratulations.
Oh, well, thank you. Yes, I'm very happy about that, too, believe me. And he's got a son named Tyler, and he and his wife, Dolly, are in the midst of fostering a little 2-year-old girl who they are now going to be, I hope, very shortly putting in for adoption. And so that's really sweet. And Robin has a son, Julian. Both my grandsons are just the apples of my eye. And then I also have a nephew who's about the same age, a grandnephew. And so we have all these boys. So we're happy Brennan and Dolly are going to get a little girl, perhaps. That's really sweet. We need a little more girl power in the family.
Absolutely. I was going to ask, how is Robin doing? I mean, I hear about stuff in the news, but I'm not big on the whole tabloids and whatnot. What's he like, and how's he doing?
He's doing really well. He's working on new music. He's healthy. He's taking care of himself. He's working out. He has a terrific lady in his life who is really a grounding influence on him, a stabilizing influence on him. He went through a hard time there for a while. He was a bit off kilter, and they've been going through a custody issue with his former wife, Paula, and things are getting worked out. There was some information that was unfortunate, that was not really true, that was put out there, but the Family Services has decided that Robin should have joint custody with Paula, and that's as it should be. And Robin is really very loving and very good to his son. So we were just all together for Robin's birthday the other day, his 40th birthday, and had a huge party with lots of stuff for kids to do. Had kids everywhere because Robin, like Alan, believed in bringing big family events. We've always had family events. Even after Alan and I were divorced, I was invited to his house at Christmas time and, to see his family. We've all kept in touch and kept our relationships going.
Well, Robin's younger than I am. I didn't know that.
Ah, well, I guess so.
Younger than me by 4 years.
Oh.
Wow.
Okay.
Okay. Well, I got to talk about some of your music because I know 1968 you came out with your first album. What was that like to make that achievement?
It was so exciting, and there's some wonderful little trickle-down effects of that. Some of the people that I knew then are still in my life. One of them, Brooks Arthur, was the engineer. He's now the music supervisor, music director for Adam Sandler's movie company. I think he's probably about late 70s or 80 years old, and he's still going strong and just one of the most wonderful people. And that was the very first project and was very exciting. I could be as creative as I wanted, and I don't even know if that's still available anywhere. But I'm working on my 12th project right now, 12th album called Rise, working with Ted Perlman, who's worked with Bob Dylan, Ringo Starr, just all kinds of people, Celine Dion, and we're working on a project right now called Rise, and my albums are available on a couple of them on iTunes, and then if you want to order them, they're on my website, glorialoring.com, and Friends and Lovers, my big hit, came out of Days of Our Lives. And that's another one of those coincidence stories.
Yeah, you got hooked up with Carl Anderson with that.
Well, what happened was I was complaining to my associate producer on the show, who was my darling friend, and we talked every day, and I was saying, I'm never going to have a hit record now because everybody thinks of me as a soap opera actress, even though I sang on the show to great mail response and phone-in response. Everybody loved Liz Chandler singing. But, I said, the record companies, the music industry thinks of me as a soap opera actress now. And she said, well, how could it happen? And I said, well, if I found a really great song and I introduced it on Days of Our Lives and the fans loved it because we have 10 million viewers and I went on kind of daydreaming how it might happen. This is chapter 5 of my book. And the next morning, she brought me a song that had been sent in to Days of Our Lives, and it was, What Would You Think If I Told You? It was Friends and Lovers. And I listened to the first verse and the first chorus, and I said, oh, my God, that's a hit song if I ever heard one. And I started singing it on the show, and it took about a year before it was released as a record, but it went right up the charts and was at the top of all the charts all over North America. And I got my hit record. And a number of years, and I knew it was a duet, so someone I was dating at the time introduced me to Carl Anderson and played me his album, and I said, that is the voice for this song. And Carl was such a masterful singer. And several years after the record came out, we didn't have a copy of it in our legal possession. And I decided to re-record the song with Carl, and it turned out to be fortuitous because he passed only a year later. If I had waited too long, he wouldn't have been able to do it. So what a joy to record the song once again with him. And he was a wonderful man and a wonderful singer.
Yes, and of course, you've also done a lot of music for television as well, especially sitcoms. And, I grew up with Facts of Life and Different Strokes. And, of course, Hello, Larry is another one. I do not know Hello, Larry. What was that?
I think that was something that Alan wrote. Alan and I together are responsible for the theme for Facts of Life and the theme for Different Strokes. And that was my voice that you've been hearing, is my voice. You've been hearing all these years on Facts of Life. So that was a joy. I was newer to songwriting, and Alan said, "Come on, work on this with me," and we, brainstormed it and came up with something that was so catchy. He came up with that first line: "You take the good, you take the bad, you take them both, and there you have it," and which, of course, just has been ringing on the airwaves ever since.
It's interesting because one of the things I remember about Facts of Life was the beautiful Lisa Whelchel. And I didn't know till later, this was when I was younger, of course, that she was also a singer, and she did a Christian pop album. And I remember at the time I had it. It was a cassette at the time. And I remember one song off. It was called Good Girl. And I remember that she also had that sideline singing career outside playing Blair in the Facts of Life.
Yeah, I don't know anything about that. I watched the show occasionally, but really I was just responsible for the theme song, so I didn't keep up with everybody's career. But not too long ago, really last year, Charlotte Rae is turning 90, or is 90, I think, 91 now, and they had a Facts of Life reunion on one of the morning home shows, and Home and Family, I think it's called. Oh, what is it called? Anyway, so I was there to sing the Facts of Life theme, and Lisa wasn't there, but a number of the stars from the show were there, and Charlotte Rae was honored, so that was really exciting.
Was Nancy McKeon there?
Yeah, I think Nancy was there, yeah.
They're the only two names I remember. It's been so long. I remember those two, but
yeah.
I remember Trudy, but I don't remember the name of the actors that played her.
Yeah, that's not my area of expertise.
And, of course, Different Strokes. I grew up with that. And, of course, Gary Coleman had a lot of complications in his career and in his life. He went way too young. And, of course, we all remember him as Arnold.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, he did a good job in that role.
Yeah. Between the two theme songs, which was the easiest to write, and were there any complications in putting those together?
No, there were no complications. For me, Facts of Life, because once it got started, it just kind of rolled along. And I think I have a special place for that because I sang that. I didn't sing the the Different Strokes theme. So and it's still listed as one of the top theme songs ever written. So that's been quite an honor to be in that category.
Yeah, and I remember one of my favorite sitcoms of the 80s was Married with Children. I loved Married with Children. I remember there was one episode where they were. I think I don't know if I'm going to get this 100% right, so I'm trying my best here. But
I know nothing about that show, so I maybe saw it 4 times in my whole life. So it's not an area I can comment on.
I just think Ed O'Neill, of course, played Al Bundy, and I think he was verbally making fun of Facts of Life. And of course, at the end of the episode, the Facts of Life theme song came on.
Oh, that's fun.
Yeah.
A lot of play through the years.
Yeah. So
I wanted to just mention before we finish up that I'm doing this play in Palm Springs and with Ann Landers, and I don't know if anybody in New Brunswick or anybody who's listening to your podcast will be down in Palm Springs, but it's April 14th through April 23rd.
Okay. And
we do 8 performances, and it's a beautiful theater. As I think I mentioned, I was there 3 years ago, and it's a beautiful theater, and it's a wonderful play. It's touching, it's funny, it's a little risque in places. She was such a plain-spoken person. She just said what was on her mind. She spoke up to people. She told the truth as she saw it. So she's quite a wonderful person to spend a couple of hours with. So I hope if anybody's listening who's going to be in the Palm Springs, well, we get a lot of snowbirds down in Palm Springs in the winter. So this is still at the height of the season.
Have you ever been up this way in the New Brunswick area?
Not to New Brunswick. Years ago, Alan Thicke was producing an Anne Murray special called Number One with a Bullet, and we were in Prince Edward Island, PEI.
Oh yeah, okay.
Yeah, and that was great fun, and what a beautiful place. I'm sure it's similar in look and topography to New Brunswick. That part of the world is so beautiful, and I remember they took us out to a restaurant one night, just the portion of the staff crew, and they had a lobster that they had caught that day that I swear was half the size of the table. It was the biggest thing I'd ever seen. And you'd always heard that, big lobsters aren't tender. No, this was amazing. It was so tender, so tasty. So my remembrance of Prince Edward Island, Island, are very, very fond.
My family and I used to go to Prince Edward Island when we were young. We used to go camping every year, and we go to Prince Edward Island, go to Rainbow Valley, and all those places. I haven't been there since the '80s, but I remember it very, very well. And I think wow, what a small world that you and Alan had been there.
Yeah, I'm not sure why we wound up in Prince Edward Island to tape this special, but I think it was a Canadian production. And maybe Anne had a connection to PEI. I don't know.
Well, I would like to see the Canadian Film Institution grow here in Canada. I know the government hasn't been behind it the way they should, but I know there's been some great films made here and some great television, like the Trailer Park Boys. I guess they're still doing really well here. But but I would like to see the Canadian Film Institution get back to where they were in the 70s and the 80s, when we made some movies that were ours,
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I got to say, Steve Joyner gave you very high praise. He approached me to have you on here, and he was my first guest this year. And he felt very, very bad when he tried to do an interview with you, but he was very apologetic, and he just asked, he says, Greg, he said, you need to check out this woman's credits, and would you do an interview with this woman, Gloria Loring? And I was like, okay, let me get online here. And I looking through, and I know he had mentioned Alan Thicke, but I was looking at all your other credits, and I was like, wow, you've had this amazing career with music and the stuff you did with diabetes and the soap operas, and I gotta say, you've got talent in more places than I can name,
Well, I think what I've always wanted to do is. When I was a kid, I wanted to either be a teacher or a singer, as long as it got me to the front of the room.
Yeah.
So I've always loved performing for people and doing things that felt good for me. And singing and then acting became those vehicles. Communication became those vehicles. And then, of course, writing also. I created 5 books for people with diabetes. There was a book, Kids, Food, and Diabetes, with recipes and advice. I had another book called Parenting a Diabetic Child. The Days of Our Lives cookbooks. So, I've done what was in front of me to do and done the best I could, and I'm very grateful for the career I've been able to have. I mean, it's quite a blessing. I look back on it and I'm kind of amazed myself in some ways.
I'm amazed you guys were in Prince Edward Island. Most people I interview don't even know where we are here in this little nook and crock in the world.
Well, I tell you what, I'm going to need to go because I am in the middle of memorizing my script, and I have a certain amount of work I have got to get done today. But I have so enjoyed talking with you, and thank you so much for letting me talk with the folks up in Canada and wherever and however you will be heard. And I send my hello to everyone. And once again, my website is glorialoring.com. And I'm on Instagram. I got a lot of followers on Instagram. And I'm also on Twitter and Facebook at Gloria Loring. So we'll be seeing each other and talking to each other somehow along the way, perhaps again.
Do you mind if I add you on Facebook?
Well, if you can. I'm not sure you can. I'm over my limit.
Oh,
on
are
my
you?
personal page 5,000.
Oh yeah, that I've run into that problem with
I
some
have
too.
a second page that's my professional page that you can subscribe to it. I guess I don't know how that works. It's above my pay grade, so.
Well, before you,
I just try to post some things, once or twice a week, and keep myself out there and get my work done. So.
Well, before you go, would you mind doing a plug for my show?
Sure, I'll be glad to.
Yeah, just state your name, and my name's Greg Gilbert. My show is called Python's Paradise, like the snake, and of course, I'm from New Brunswick, Canada.
Okay, all right.
You ready?
Yes, I am. You tell me when.
Go now.
Hi, this is Gloria Loring, and you should be listening to Greg Gilbert